and I'd like to welcome you to the PMI New Jersey Agile Discussion Group. And tonight's topic is a lean coffee. And for that, we're going to be using a Trello board. And if you don't have access to it yet, it'd be great if you could put your email in the chat, and Nitin will add you. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. And everybody should see a Trello board. And in a minute or so, Nitin's going to explain what we're doing tonight with it. And as you could see, there's already some cards on it that we're going to be discussing, and then we're going to invite the attendees to add their own questions. So Nitin, would you like to explain lean coffee?
Yes, thank you, Bob. So, as some of you know, I'm Nitin Khanna. I am the Agile LCI chairperson, and I tag team with Bob on our events. And today we're doing an exciting lean coffee. I am getting a few requests in the background, so I will also tackle those emails. I think the last person I got was Seth's. So, a lean coffee doesn't have a set agenda. It's not a PowerPoint. It's a very open forum and things evolve. And we are using a virtual tool because we are virtual and there are a lot of people here as well. So if you could simply read this board, it has swim lanes going from left to right. You have things to do, things in progress, things that are blocked. We might have a snafu, and things that are done. We might have a few aha moments as well to share. And if you simply follow along, things in the done. So Bob is Bob is a co-administrator, and somebody created this Trello board. So it's done. What's happening in the present? What's happening now? And that we can see is in progress. Somebody is explaining what lean coffee is. And there's a little card for that as well. And I have been adding PMI New Jersey members to this board. So a lot of Scrum teams emulate this and make their work visible in such a way. And you can have all kinds of Kanban metrics as well. And things to do. This is where we open up the forums and we let people go in. And Bob can even demonstrate this. If you click on the plus sign, add a card, you can type in a topic of interest. It doesn't have to be really long. Could be just a few words, could be a sentence or two. And it's something that you would like to discuss or hear from other people over here. Once we do that, we will have the option of putting some weight to it, some metric to it, and we have a thumbs up vote thing that Bob will go over in a couple of minutes. And then we'll just take it from there. We'll have a little timer and we'll just see what happens. So at this point, if you are in this board, we invite you to go ahead, add a few cards. And I'm just going to be looking a little away. I am going to look for other people requesting to get in if they are not in already. There is also a chat that I will be monitoring in the background as well. And thank you, John C. as well for providing the link. And if you're not in, yes, we'll need your email address and I can add you to the board.
So it looks like one person added which Agile methodology is the best. So far we have 4 topics and somebody's already voting. And I'll show you how you do that. To vote on an item, And actually, Nitin will ask you to vote because you probably should wait to vote till you see all the items. You click on the item, and then if you scroll down to on the right-hand side, there's a button that says vote. And if you click on that, it will add a vote. If you change your mind, you can click on it again and the vote will go away.
Thank you, Bob. And I just sent you an invitation. And Sharon, I'm going to put you in next as well.
And this has nice functionality too, where you can sort, and you could sort by, doesn't give that anymore. I guess they changed it. There used to be an option to sort it by the number of votes.
Everyday sort list by. Well, that's part of the automation. Or sort by.
There's no more vote.
Oh, by number of vote. Oh, wow.
Okay.
Trello
So
has been trying to get some paid membership from people. I don't know if they moved that functionality away.
that's the best way to get customers, right? All right, so it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 6 or 7 items. Anybody else want to put something in? You know, we can add some as we're going as well. And this list will evolve. So right now, looking at, you know, people who voted, there's 3 votes for which agile methodology is the best. And so what I'm going to do is, since Nitin is done explaining lean coffee, I'm going to mark that done. And unfortunately, I think Nitin's going to be adding members to the board throughout this meeting, but so we'll just leave that in progress. So does anybody else want to vote? And what I'm doing is I'm creating an ordered list by just manually dragging the items that have numbers on it, and I'm putting with the highest number on top. And this one even has a comment. What's that? Somebody made a comment. Oh,
And
that's
this
cool.
is also a similar exercise to people who might be in a room where we might give a post-it stack and people are just writing their thoughts down and throwing them up on the wall. And then as Bob said, there's a sort order, things that are similar in nature, or we use a dot voting mechanism just to bring things to light.
All right, then do you want to get started with the top one? Which agile methodology is the
Let's see.
best?
You kick us off. I'm adding one more person in, Bob.
Okay, give me one more second. All right. The order is starting to form. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see a lot of votes, so either people are just gonna go with their peers or whatever they want. But again, if you're in a room or, you're working with your, people on your team on a call or something like this is a good way to, start getting ideas and getting, as far as what people want to talk about. And then as a team, you can do this voting where basically that way everybody has a say. And like Nitin mentioned, if you're in the same room, which is very it doesn't happen as often as it used to, you could tell everybody, okay, you have 3 dots, and then on each card, a person could put all 3 dots on one, or they could put 1 dot on, 3 different cards. And then basically based on the dots, you'd be able to decide which items you'd want to talk about first. It's just very quick ways to get feedback. You don't have to spend a lot of time. Like you could probably get this board created probably in less than 5 minutes. You give people 3 minutes to put up the ideas and say, okay, everybody, you get 3 dots, walk over, put the dots on, and then you get started. So is it okay to get started, Nitin?
Yep.
All right.
And again, if anybody has technical issues, we'll monitor the chat.
Oh, as I was talking, this backlog evolved. There's now 5. There's now a 5 on this one. And this is a topic that's probably for you, Nitin, with AI. There's a session on that. All right, so it looks like the AI is on top. So I'm going to drag this over. And how Gen AI will help in agile methodology. So do you want to take a first pass at that and then?
Sure. I'm actually going to open this up for others. AI is evolving very quickly, as we know. A lot of things happening. Some people are feeling a little concerned, some threatened. Some people are excited about this. There's a whole range of emotions under the rainbow, as we say, right? But I'm actually curious in our audience in this forum, how many people are starting to see the use of AI and what does that look like? We're not looking for sensitive information or anything that might be proprietary. We have had a guest speaker. We've had a few examples put in with internal based like chat GPT models. But I want to just open it up if people want to either put something in our Zoom chat or just unmute yourself for a moment and share what's out there, what you've seen.
Yeah, obviously, Ramesh Gupta here. So, using Chat GPT with open source or publicly available, that brings a lot of risk to the organization. So, if there is a Chat GPT model which is adopted by any organization, where the data doesn't go out of the premise and it's stays there. I think there is a more reliability of that information and more replacing sort of thing. So I would prefer that rather than using publicly available uh, G- chat GPT. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing with us, Ramesh.
Yeah.
I can give an example. This is Kevin Wyatt. So we work in I work in a retail chain for an eye doctor, and we're building like customer data platforms. So what that does is gives you additional insights. Like think of it almost like a three-dimensional insight. So you'll see like how many times does the customer come back, right? And they try to create you know a a metric to say like the likelihood to come back that that patient's going to come within the next month or so, based on like building a historical profile for the patient. So it gets into like behavioral things, right? As well as like what products they purchase and things like that. So it's just like additional insights that get offered for this like through AI, um, through these customer data platforms.
That's interesting. Thank you for sharing, Kevin. Anybody else who might want to chime in?
Hi, Sunil here. So here we are still experimenting a lot with AI applications. Actually, we are we have just now created an application for the IEEE membership to come in and ask questions. There's still a lot of things in experimental stage as far as the PMs are concerned, or Scrum Masters are concerned for the meeting, meeting minutes, meeting summaries, etc. We started using a GPT application a few months ago. So a lot of work going on here.
Well, thank you, Sunil. Thank you for sharing that as well. So as we've heard, there is a wide and broad application to these things. And I used to laugh at this expression many years ago, garbage in, garbage out, or GIGO. And just a note of caution and fun, whatever AI models we use, whatever is put in for a system, we just have to be careful that it's accurate or it's up to date. It's not going to be intended to be disruptive. And of course, there are certain ethical boundaries as well to be considered. And it certainly is spreading. Last month, we had a guest speaker on a tool, and it's up now if you haven't cut the recording, on something called Gembalytics. If you are an agile practitioner and needed some sort of an AI-based coach or someone you can get insights from, you could ask. And that gets into prompt engineering as well. So this is really diverse. It's spreading. Not really sure what else is going to come about, but it's certainly moving rather quickly. Bob, I'll give you the last word.
Sure. Yeah, we're at time. Before I provide any of my opinions, I have to make a statement because of where I work. Anything I say basically is my opinion. It's my personal opinion. It has nothing to do with the New York Federal Reserve or the Board of Governors. It's, anything I say basically is Bob's opinion. And so my fear, and I've been hearing a lot of people making statements like this where, oh, you don't need a product owner to write stories anymore. You just have AI do it. And I'm worried that teams may become lazy and just let this stuff spew all these requirements out without having the right people making sure everything's okay. But again, that's only my opinion.
Bob, Sunil here. I agree with you. I've been using the GPT applications, and I've seen many scenarios where the hallucination is pretty strong. So at least at this point, if we are not looking at the output of all these generative AI applications, it is not just that the people are will get lazy. It goes beyond that. That whatever we produce, as Nitin said earlier, it will be GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Not exactly. In the sense that since generative AI output is not correct, our products may be defective, will have problems.
Mm-hmm.
So garbage in, garbage out in that.
So isn't like that we should use that output just as a framework or just, setting up the tone, but the final thing must be reviewed by practitioner or the project managers or whomsoever is responsible to review that and check that and then go forward after checking those sort of things, right? So I think it should not be used as it is. I think that's the key thing here, right?
Ramesh, that your comment I think is spot on, but I kind of grew up through the project program management ranks, and I've worked on a lot of large waterfall projects, and the team would spend weeks, months creating this requirements document and then hand it to the customer and say, okay, this is what we're going to build, sign off. And then the customer, they kind of just skim through it and they sign off. And I'm just worried that now we're making it easier to do that again on Agile projects. But that's, you know, again, that's my opinion, but it's, people don't have time. You can't comprehend reading 100, 200-page document and really understand what's going to be built. But thanks for saying that.
I
Yeah,
actually
that's
feel
true.
generative AI, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I feel generative AI can be used in multiple ways in the agile practices, right? You know, you can actually request for best practices for anything, right? Running retrospectives, right? It can actually give you wonderful tools that are available, latest tools that are available potentially that you can use to drive your meetings. You know, that's one way to do it. Lessons learned, right? You can actually initiate a brainstorming sessions with ChatGPT to see what are all the types of lessons learned in that area of development, right? And then you can actually bring that to your team and then get those discussions started. So there are multiple ways generative AI can actually help augment our agile practices.
So
Yeah,
I have
I
it's,
like the word augmentation.
it's definitely here. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have one basic question there. How these things are going to shape up the team structure, like you know, inputs you can get from the tool like ChatGPT and all. Is that fair to assume that today I have a team of 10 people, tomorrow I'll have a team of 5 people, or as a you know, Scrum Master, I'm managing like 2 projects today. Tomorrow, I might be asked to manage 5 projects since a lot of things are automated and a lot of things I'm getting from the tool, from the AI tool itself. What you guys think about that?
Your question is about the team size, you know.
Yeah, team
change.
size or even the workload on a Scrum Master, right? You know, since right now, let's say AI tool is not there, the Scrum Master is managing, let's say, two projects, right? In terms of managing those sort of things. So, is it possible tomorrow the Scrum Master can be told, like, you know, you have to manage like, since you are getting a lot of inputs, pointers from the tool, you do not have to do all those manual things.
Yeah.
So you should have more bandwidth, right? So that's what my question was.
It's possible, right? I mean, at the
Mm,
end of the day, if
mm,
generative AI is there to help increase
mm.
the productivity, right?
Productivity.
First of all,
Mm,
we cannot take everything that generative AI says is the right thing to
mm,
do, right? It has
mm,
to
mm,
be applied to your area of, you know, practice and see if
mm,
that makes sense,
mm,
right? It requires some you know, looking into some research and making sure whatever recommendations coming up by the AI,
mm,
generative AI,
mm.
is in fact good for you, right? That takes time. But at the same time, yeah, it is definitely there to increase the productivity, in which case um, there could be some workload added. I mean, in this
Yeah,
day,
and
I think having more work is better than less work, right?
yeah, I mean that's true, but the other side of that, you know, there could be uh, impact of, you know, how many people can be employed, right?
That's true. That is true. I mean, at the end of the day, that has to be a discussion between the manager and the
Yeah,
scrum master and making sure
yeah,
that load
mm,
is appropriately managed. Yep.
mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're definitely way over time, but this is really a great comments and this is a great topic. Is it okay if we move on?
Well, you know
Maybe.
what, Bob? I normally don't say anything, but let me just put this in here because I always have to mention PMI. If you haven't had a chance, and if you're not aware of it, I encourage all of you to try PMI's Infinity, which is PMI's, you know, basically AI assistant specifically for project management. To check it out and see how it can help you, as well as all the various blogs and posts and other articles and as well as guides on how to write prompts and such about AI to just go deeper to see how AI can help you in project management. So take a look at that.
Yeah, I have used that. That's pretty helpful, particularly the prompt engineering one. I did really like that. Yeah.
John, that would actually be a very good conversation for discussion, right? Just to get a sense of if any of the members here have used Infinity and what is their experience and any areas of improvement, right? So that actually can drive other PMs that haven't used it to look for it.
And this is Jim. I have a question as well. I've heard several presentations about AI and the tools, and I've not used them myself, but really basic question here with it. It's to understand what people have done. There's a very basic distinction here between using an AI tool and just leveraging the information that has already been compiled and added as its body of knowledge and using your own data or your own inputs. For example, if you were in a group where you want to do a bunch of financial analysis, you could say to the tool, I just want you to use only the data that I'm giving you, and then I want you to apply all your analytical techniques. So I was really curious in the examples people have given, if they have constrained their use of the tool to their own information or the information provided within their organization, or they have opened it up to whatever the tool wants to bring into the application that you're trying to use it for.
So basically, and that's what I was previous comment was, if you're using something publicly available like GPT, open source, it is going to mess up your data with the publicly available, information on which data it has been trained to. But if you have any chat GPT model optimized for your organization, where your organization is so only your organization data is there and the tool is trained only on that, then I think you will have much more authentic output compared to any publicly available tool.
So in my case, Jim, there are organization constraints where we are restricted to even use these generative AI tools like ChatGPT and in inputting organization data. So
Yeah.
won't be able to answer that.
I think that's something where people are going to increasingly encounter, but it seems to me that, taking information within the organization, using whatever data models are appropriate, and there's a big learning curve there in order to make the tool most effective is probably something that's in our future.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So it's a lot of unknowns at this time,
All right, thank you all for the contributions. Let me call an Elmo of sorts. That's enough. Let's move on. And just as a quick tip, if you look at the board, a new card popped up, and I just put the convention that I use personally, saying split, and that's use of data for AI, which we just discussed, and we're just going to call that done. And let's see what else there is, right?
Okay,
And
we have
the to do.
we have 2 5s. So we'll just go with the one that's on top. Which agile methodology is the best?
Yeah, and I think there's a comment on the card as well.
It came from me. Yeah, I actually have used Scrum, and so I'm biased towards it. I really love it. But I'm here to participate in the discussion to see what others feel and what are the advantages of the other practices.
Yeah, so I have used Scrum as well, but I have heard a lot of good things about Kanban. So if someone can explain like subtle differences between these two, that would be helpful.
You want me to take a pass in it first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
We have a love interest in Scrum. We're not alone in this. If anybody can have affairs in the world of IT and agile enthusiasts, it's definitely with Scrum.
Yeah, and it has the mind share. It's the most used framework of and basically, if you think about it, what Scrum does is it enables teams to work with agile values and principles, and that's really what it does. Through all the different events and roles that it has and the artifacts that you produce. Where Kanban is more set on a pulling type of system instead of pushing work on people pull it, and visualizes the team's workflow, where basically you can work with the team and come up with columns that make sense as far as how the team works. Like, how does a team work? They, they write the software, then they put it into they do it locally, then they put it into the dev environment, then they move it into like a pre-QA type of environment, and you can track all those steps in columns, and then basically the team then would be able to manage their flow. And then Kanban could be a whole ADG type of discussion, because in each column you have work in process limits to make sure that the team doesn't get overloaded. And it's a great way to visualize the work. And there's no time box, basically it's a continuous flow. The teams that I work with, we have a monthly time box where at the end of the month, we basically share with our stakeholders what the team provided. But not like Scrum, where it could be anywhere from 1 to 4 weeks. Nitin, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to supplement what you've said, so Kanban has 4 practices. One is the visualization of the workflow. That's the key thing. Limitations of your work in progress or WIP, and then active management of the WIP, and inspect and adaptation of the team's definition of the workflow. Scrum team members can also utilize Kanban. And Kanban is certainly a flow-based model. It's very useful when, if you're going from point A to point X, Y, Z, whereas Scrum, I feel, has a little bit more creative freedom and a lot more of the unknowns. If your teams are using both, Scrum.org has a great course with professional Scrum with Kanban, and there's actually a lightweight guide on that as well, just to see what are some of the metrics and the differences or the definitions that would supplement Scrum as well. So both are great tools. If you are someone just starting off and there's a lot of chaos, sometimes I just prefer people visualize things so we know what's happening in reality. We acknowledge it, and that could just be Kanban. And then slowly see if Scrum makes sense or not for people.
So, am I?
Go ahead, Sid.
Okay, cool. So, so I think I'm going to take this at a different tack. So, which agile methodology is the best? I think it depends. Like, if it depends on the maturity of the team, how familiar they are with agile to begin with. If I have a team that has not done agile at all, I'll probably stick with like a Kanban board because it's so simple and they'll figure it out along the way. If you're looking at it like a sustaining mechanism, Scrum, as Nitin and Bob, I completely agree. It fills that void. Sometimes you need something that's all encompassing, and you just need to have that structured go. And it's really a huge organization, in which case you might take one of the, people don't necessarily like SAFe overall, but I think it's good for its part. And if you need to jumpstart an organization with a roadmap to go and just go that, and then you inspect and adapt, you're probably not going to stick with SAFe because it's so heavy, but it's a good place to start, if at least kick you off in that direction. So I think the real answer is it depends upon the group that you're working with. You inspect and adapt along the way. The key is just starting.
I have a quick question, and it's a very specific question. So it's in IT industry, like my understanding, and I could be wrong here, that the Scrum or Agile is more suited for any like software development kind of project where you do not know, the product will look like, and you need a constant feedback and iteration. But is that something like infrastructure related project where waterpark could be more suitable and that sort of thing, right? Rather than Agile or Scrum. Any thoughts on that? If anyone can comment on that.
So Ramesh, I'm in a very I know we've met before back at TD Bank many times. I'm in a similar area when you in IT security, and I agree with you. At the end of the day, it really depends on the organization. So I still am able to manage those infrastructure type projects using Scrum boards in Jira. But at the end of the day, sometimes you have to boil it down to what's the burn down, because you're probably looking at these vulnerabilities that you have to go. So you either have to take it from a giant spreadsheet and then pull it into the Jira board or whatever board, or use that waterfall roadmap to begin with to know where you're going to go, and then slowly, as you're doing that WBS breakdown, you're pulling that into the Scrum board.
Okay, that makes sense. So basically, a combination of both, basically hybrid tracking, right? Hybrid approach.
Yeah, the key is don't get too heavy. The fault of the waterfall is that you get too heavy on the planning and you never get to doing. So you need to do just enough, just enough.
Just
And
enough
you're gonna
structure and we start with it.
Yeah, you're going to be uncomfortable because it's going to be not as much as you're used to, and you're not going to have all the sign off that you thought you had. But there are ways around that. Like instead of having a BRD, which we'll get to, you can sign off on the story and accept it. We can have an offline discussion if you want to at some point, Ramesh.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think we have no.
So we're at time. So the question is to the group, do we want to continue this or should we move on to the next part?
Visual thumbs up or put in the chat and move on.
All right, no, I don't hear any no, or so let's move on.
So the only thing about that is if you look at the comment, I actually put a comment on there, and it wasn't, which is what is the worst agile methodology? Because you got to look at the best and the worst.
Oh, that's a nice flip of the coin.
I mean, everything is a tool to get a particular task done or getting a project done. So I'm sure they're all equally good. But again, I only know about Scrum, so just an opinion.
We can still
That's like an arranged marriage that's perfectly made, Don't worry about anything else. You found Scrum.
Yeah.
Don't worry about anything else. It's okay to peek and look at others. But jokes apart, where an organization is, some sort of a maturity or an evolution is what I prefer saying, and what their needs are. Some teams are just better suited towards Kanban, and some are better suited to Scrum, and some might be suited to some other things. They all have a purpose and a goal.
My only word of advice would be, if you're just getting started, just keep it simple. Don't jump into a scaling framework. You want to get like 1 or 2 teams working well, and then you can maybe look at scaling. But don't think, oh, we're going to bring in this scaling methodology and everybody's going to be agile now. What you'll do is you'll have a lot of teams, most likely doing it wrong, but you might get lucky, right? All right, so the next one on the list is, I think Seth, you mentioned this. What is the best way to use Scrum with and Jira with given a business requirement document? I can share a firsthand story unless somebody wants to jump in.
Go for it, Bob.
All right. This is a previous employer. I was working on a new project that we're launching. We had the team, and then they handed us a BRD. And I looked at them and I said, what is this? And I said, well, that's the requirements. And then I said, well, we don't look at BRDs. We only look at Jira. So, maybe I was being a hard person, but in essence, the BAs needed to take that BRD and put it into Jira, and they needed to break it down into stories if they wanted to use Scrum and Jira, right? Because, they already had the BRD, why not just do a waterfall, right? But that's pretty much what we did. I coached them, I helped them, look at the different requirements that were in the BRD, and then, breaking them into stories and aligning them with different epics. So that way you could see how, how the things were progressing on it. But does anybody else have any experience with that?
Yep,
So,
my experience is very similar to that. So we have BAs working in our projects. They actually take these requirements either from BRD or from requirements workshops. And then we actually create the stories, epics depending on the scale. And then, we actually have the POs prioritize these tickets for us in a given scrum, in the scrum sprint planning, and then we take it from there. So very similar to what you said, Bob.
So question, can Genai help you to convert BRD into stories and epics and things like that? Does anyone have any experience on that?
Maybe generative AI can help us there.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. If anyone had any experience on doing that. Okay.
So
Mm,
that's a great question. And I have another story very similar to Bob. The team was given a traditional BRD, but they were also venturing into experimenting with Scrum. They were open to ideas, knowing there's going to be some disruption, right? So we took the BRD and we started slicing and dicing it into user stories or other product backlog items. And we use metadata in a tool to kind of reference back to certain sections. So it was very easy for people who had authored the BRD or those who were more familiar with the BRD to kind of cross-reference and go back and forth. What we found happening is, as the developers started asking more questions, looking for clarity, other stories emerged, and which is fine, that is expected. And people started to appreciate a more dynamic, robust tool that offered great visibility where people could collaborate on together. And going forward, they decided to kind of put the BRD flavors aside unless there was like an extremely critical call out or release where some heavy documentation was also needed. So it was an evolution for this team, and that's what they did. They just used metadata very creatively just to make sure everybody was on the same page.
One comment with BRDs is sometimes you're in a regulated industry, and so you have to have the BRDs there. What I've done in that case is actually change the SOP to basically have it so that it's as written would be the equivalent of the SOP, would be the compliance documentation. So you have to change it. So sometimes you have to go back and actually change how the whole organization is managing their compliance program in order to handle it.
That's great, Chet. And we need more people like you and doing some things like that that'll help the organization.
Yeah, and also think about, normally when somebody builds a BRD, they ask for the kitchen sink because they don't want to go through the change process that the PM manages so tightly and makes sure it's painful. So what they do is they ask for stuff that they might use in 100 years. And so it's so cool when, you look at all these requirements and they're like, hey, I don't need that. Oh yeah, I don't need that. And so it really saves time, effort, support. It's huge. But anyway, I forgot to set the timer. Is there, I have a feeling we're at the 5-minute mark. Is there anything else on this? Unless somebody shouts out, no, I'm gonna mark it done.
So very, very basic question, sorry. So if someone has given BRD, obviously they are thinking about waterfall and there could be change in the requirement and that sort of thing. So how we manage that in Scrum, thinking that the stakeholder has given me BRD and they might think about something like a change request in future.
Well, that's what Scrum's really good about, because what you do is if you translate that BRD into a backlog, then basically you have an idea as far as what it will take to deliver everything. And then as you're progressing, they're going to see that, hey, I don't really want that. I want this instead. And that's the power. That's where you get that inspect and adapt, and you get that feedback, and you don't do things that aren't needed anymore. And you're able to do the things that they want. And so that's all about taking that document and making it visible. And that's tools like Jira is great for that.
So
Okay.
Ramesh, instead of thinking of a BRD, think about what is the definition of done and writing that instead of a BRD.
Mhm.
What would be, all right, the client is absolutely elated.
And that definition has to come from the product owner, right?
Yeah, and
The
if
product
you're in
owner,
a consulting
Mhm.
role, it's sometimes difficult to persuade them.
Mm.
Okay, so now I'm going to mark it done. And this next one, Seth, you always have these great lead-in responses because this has a definition of done in it. Suggested topic, what is good practice for QA and UAT testing in the definition of done? Seth, do you want to take a pass at that?
Sure. One thing you need to know is what are called non-functional requirements, okay, such as performance, etc. But from my perspective, I want to make sure that the UAT has written in the story and is what is that UAT? What is it that they want to have for the story from the product owner, and they've agreed to it as part of the story writing, and that is what it will be. So maybe it's the non-functional, that it loads on time, or that the story works as according to the storyboard. So, and sometimes you'll have, load balancing, load testing thrown in there as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with a vendor, with a provider that's doing very nice demos and saying that something meets the acceptance criteria, but we're discovering after release, we're discovering things and they're kind of pushing back on them. So like, are you doing anything more than unit testing on these things? So that's the tricky part.
at the end of the day, the product owner is the quality gate. So who is the quality gate in your organization, Sal?
Yeah, so in this case, the assumption of this vendor is that when you attend this demo and they tell you that the thing meets the acceptance criteria, that you're accepting, and then you can go test it, and then you have to submit these bug fixes and things like that. So, which if our people are mostly used to the waterfall approach, where you actually, after something is delivered, you take at least 1 week to verify that what the team is saying is correct from the end user testing perspective.
so I have a tip for you, Sal, or maybe a challenge that you might throw out to people, depending on how receptive that might be. Consider adding your non-functional requirements into your definition of done. And don't expect that to be easy. That gets people scrambling and in a tizzy, and they didn't think about it. Well, how can we just say this for page must load in 1 second or less for like 1,000 pages being hit at the same time, or security mechanisms? And say, well, that's our definition of done. You figure it out during the sprint cycles,
I mean,
and it'll start forcing a conversation that is needed as well.
sorry, Nathan, what I wanted to add was
Go ahead.
in our organization, we would actually typically have an epic for non-functional requirements. Just like a BRD used to have a section for functional requirements as well as non-functional requirements, we would actually maintain a list of all the stories under the non-functional requirements bucket, and each of them will have its own acceptance criteria. And then the appropriate testing, as Seth was saying, that the stress testing, right, the performance testing, that would be done by an external vendor for us, right? And as the Scrum Master, we will make sure that those tests are passed as appropriate before closing that story in the Jira board. So we would actually maintain all the non-functional requirements as a part of a separate epic.
Yep, that is one approach, certainly. And you brought out another interesting dynamic. You have an external team or an external vendor that is going to be tackling these things on. And then you would need a mechanism or way of kind of visualizing what's being thrown out at them, right?
Yeah.
And what's happening. If that is the case, then certainly this is logical.
Yep.
And I think as teams evolve, if you want to make it messy, and if more of that becomes more in-house, then you could consider the NFRs to also get into your definition of done. So again, it just depends on the organization,
Yep.
the teams, the external vendor, a lot of things with compliance and so on and so forth. But a lot of good things here, a lot of good ideas, a lot of good things.
So this definition of done is like obviously the product owner, but anyone else contributes to that definition of done, or is it the product owner?
It's the entire Scrum team that contributes to the
That's
definition of done.
Mhm.
Because you want to make that collaborative. You don't want to just
Mhm.
have someone being very heavy-handed, right? You want to bring in your subject matter experts, your members of the dev team, and say, hey guys, at the end of 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we want a good quality product. It may or may not hit the end consumer or client, but what should we say that we need to also be doing along those 2 or 3 weeks?
I think that's key,
Makes
that
sense.
you need to have a solid definition of done that the whole team agrees to as part of the working agreement before the
Mhm.
sprints even kick off, because you don't want to have half the developers feel, oh, it met the definition of done, the other half feels it didn't. You want everyone to be consistent. Product owner, scrum master, everyone strictly adheres to what the generic definition of done is for all user stories, which would comprise having the acceptance criteria written as well.
Mhm. Yep.
And we're at time, and I just want to throw something for people to think about. What if you had no QA? What if the developers did their own QA and then pass it to the customer for their UAT? I
That is
experienced that firsthand at the previous employer.
That is risky for sure. So how did you manage, Bob?
Well, basically the team led with automation, and the automation was so good that when it came, we were doing 1 week sprints, and when it came to the sprint review, all the customer wanted to see was the results from the automation. They didn't even look at the system. And this was a bank, and it wasn't a high transaction system that processed trillions of dollars, but it definitely was a banking application. So if you do it right and you get your testing right, and the developers, the actual developers wrote the automated tests, not a special QE person.
Mm.
That was all part of development.
So your QA team essentially was replaced by this automation team, right?
Yeah,
And
basically the skills to do automation, yes.
yeah, and luckily it didn't require any manual testing, and that's why you are able to get this by.
That's very true.
Yep. Okay.
Mm.
Was there any other topics I want to talk about this one? All right. This one has 5. We already talked about this a little bit, but we can go again because it seemed like some votes were added since it's been here. So let me turn the timer on. And it's, why do most teams use Scrum? Did you want to take a pass at that, Nitin?
Well, I think, as we've said, there's a certain simplicity to this, and Scrum really bubbles up things to the surface. Scrum won't tell you how to solve for problems or issues. It's like Ken Schwaber, one of the code developers, walking around in a class, smacking his head, anecdotally saying, I have a headache, I've got a headache, I've got a headache, right? But then what do I do about it, right? It's the same thing with Scrum. It just has this tendency to just bring things to light in a very collaborative, transparent way, and allows people to really, who are masters of the craft, to work very quickly and tap on each other's shoulders if you have a nurturing environment, and just work in some sort of an instant gratification manner. I think for me, the Scrum Guide was Zen. When I read it, it's like instant gratification. That's what Scrum is. Either I'm happy or I'm really frustrated. And if I'm happy, I want to celebrate. If I'm frustrated, I want to do something about it. But those are just my thoughts.
I love your thoughts, Nate. And if I could add to it, what I really appreciate about Scrum is it enables the team to become self-managing because of the way, the events are set up and everything. And if you have an experienced Scrum Master, you can take a team that is waiting to be told what to do and turn them into and help, not, you don't really turn them into, you actually help them see how self-organizing allows them to say, hey, I'll do this. And then they talk to each other. And it's just an amazing thing to watch. And Scrum really enables that. If you want to, if your goal is to end up with a high performing team, Scrum is a wonderful framework for that. And the other cool thing is a Scrum team is full. It's not like a UI team, a component team, or a backend team. It's all the skills. So now, say you have a UI developer that wants to learn the backend, they can do that on a Scrum team because they can just volunteer for backend stories and then they pair. And that's what keeps people employed. That's what keeps everybody happy. Look at Dan Pint's intrinsic motivators, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. It gives the team that. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. Does anyone else have any other comments?
I was just going to say the one of my favorite features of the Scrum system is the time boxes, because it gives us an opportunity, every 2 weeks we do a retro and it's like, well, that sucked, but we've got another chance, starting on Monday, and it's just it's just a constant renewal of energy and motivation.
And I have to add to that, Patrick, because just recently during our retro one, we had a problem where stuff in dev got pushed into our QA environment. Yes, and we are using QE people in my current role. And they were trying to get that work into the UAT environment. And so it kind of messed everything up because then they had to back stuff out because that stuff wasn't tested yet. So during the retro, they said, hey, why don't we fix this? So basically we updated the pipelines to, and to me, this is like the ultimate in team performance is the team decided they want the QE people to pull the work. So when dev is done, QE now pulls it into the QMO environment. They use our pipeline and say and set the command to say, I want to pull this. And so now it gets them really engaged as part of the process. And it's just so cool to watch how teams can really just grow and just get better and better. I hope that made sense. I know I'm too close to it, but you have to trust me, it was a pretty cool thing. Does anyone have anything else? Because we're approaching the 2-minute mark and we're almost at the end of this item. So Nate, did you have any final things you wanted to add?
Well, thank you for that, Bob. We are at time almost. And what we try to do is just emulate what you might do with your Scrum team, be it at a retrospective or requirements gathering session, or maybe when you're planning a vacation. Our product backlog is traditionally ordered as we see topics from top to bottom instead of the older requirements that are high, medium, low, or this is also high. What you'll also notice, the cards are one on top of the other and not next to each other. This is again intentional in the world and spirit of agility. And what you're also seeing is things evolve, right? There wasn't a set agenda. Some things have been split and some things have had an ongoing discussion. And we've also tried to use a timer as much as we could. And there were also great comments on time boxes in Scrum. So hopefully you've got a good resonation of what a lean coffee can do. And for those of you who have already attended these, hopefully you enjoyed some of this as well. I know John C. likes to also have a few announcements. So maybe we can give him some time. And hey, we didn't get to your to-do cards. Maybe throw it up in the next Lean Coffee or look for comments behind them, which I'm trying to add a few.
Yeah,
We will be on.
John's off the hook. He was supposed to answer what's going on with Discipline Agile, so he was saved by the time.